This is Ken Pyle with VOD TV. We're here at the SCTE 2013 with Jim Farmer. Jim, now there was a big announcement at the end of August, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening to you personally?
Well, you know, Ken, for a while I'd been a little bit afraid that people I worked with were whispering behind my back, how do we get this old codger out of here without hurting his feelings too much? So I decided maybe I needed to do it on my own schedule instead of somebody else's, so I retired. And I figured that'd be a good 69th birthday present, and after 45 years in the industry, it seemed a little bit strange at first, yeah. But managed to keep myself busy.
Well, you're not totally retired, and we'll go back to that in a moment. But first, I want to kind of get your impressions of your career. And I guess one aspect is you were there really not at the beginning, but you were there early enough to work with a lot of the pioneers in the cable industry. And you know, who are some of the people that kind of influenced your career?
Well, let's see. Probably one of the first was Dr. Larry Clayton at Scientific Atlanta. He was my mentor in my early days. The guy was trained as a physicist, but had a lot of engineering expertise too, and the combination was really good. He was a really great guy, had a very strange but wonderful sense of humor, and I learned a lot from him. I guess another guy, Jack Chastain at Scientific Atlanta, was also instrumental, and he kept talking about a couple of guys in the industry named Bailey Neal, at the time with Sylvania Electronics, okay, and Charlie Rhodes with Tektronix. I had the pleasure later in my career of working with both of those gentlemen, and they taught me a whole lot about television. Bailey, I worked with him through a lot of IEEE activities, and Charlie Rhodes actually came to work for us at SA later and taught me a lot of what I know about the television system. So those guys, and of course I've met a lot of people in the operating end of the industry over the years and tried to really get into their heads a little bit and understand what, even though I was on the manufacturing end of it, what the operating end of it was like. I have a philosophy that as a manufacturer, if you're going to do a good job developing equipment, you've got to know your customer's business better than the customer knows his business. Because that's the way we've actually been able to develop, I think, the best products, is understanding his business, understanding the customer's business well enough that we could say, now what technologies can we bring to bear on his problems that solve problems for him. So it was a real pleasure to be able to do that.
Well, and it's kind of, you know, I didn't think of the irony here. I mean, you started in the industry about the same time this organization got started, right?
Pretty close to the same time, yes. In fact, I'm not positive what year they show me joining, but I did hear about this nascent organization called the SCTE, and it went through some tough times in the beginning. I remember one time the first executive director all of a sudden left town and left an office full of strewn papers, and if it hadn't been for a couple of volunteer heroes, the organization would not have made it. Then I had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors of the SCTE early on. We had some interesting times there. In fact, I shouldn't tell this now because my wife may see it, but we had a situation early on where a couple of board of directors members got in a pretty bad fight with each other about something, and it had the potential of tearing the organization apart at the time. So I was secretary of the board at that time, and decided I needed to try to mediate this disagreement if I could. Well, my wife happened to have some surgery scheduled about that time. Now, don't tell her, but while she was in surgery, yeah, Kathy, don't look at this part of the thing. But while she was in surgery, I was actually in the lobby on the payphone calling these two warring parties and trying to negotiate a truce between them. But it must have worked because the organization has thrived. And then in recent years, I've had the pleasure of serving on the initial board of directors of the Fiber to the Home Council and the Similarities between how the two organizations developed, the SCTE 35 years ago, the Fiber to the Home Council now, the similarities of what goes on are very striking.
Yeah, you know, I always had the impression at grassroots, that's kind of what made it work, is grassroots, and people like yourself, volunteers, who made this thing happen.
Oh, absolutely. You need your professional people. You need them to carry out things, but any organization is composed of the membership, and it is good membership that makes it work.